everyone. This is Norm, Captain Contrary. This is my third attempt at this. The first attempt, the audio crapped out on me. And then attempt number 2, I just realized I am just rambling way too much. So I'm going to... I took a deep breath, deleted the file, and started over. So time number 3. Take number 3. We're going to see if we can get this right. So a little bit of a backstory. I'm going to try to be quick about this. Is that I had a post on Facebook that posted a link to The Income Tax: The Root of All Evil by Frank Choderov. You'll see this link right here. This is it, and then this is the link to the post, the actual post. I'm going to post these in the comments, so you don't have to worry about copying them or anything like that. So my friend have replied to this, and I thought it was interesting because my friend tries to deconstruct Frank Chodorov's argument, but then totally just shows that they didn't actually read Choderov. And then asks a bunch of questions that have been answered many times over by libertarians, voluntarists, and ANCAPs for the better part of 50 years now, and they've been dealt with time and time and time again. So, without any further ado, they say, Choderov. So he raises questions surrounding the nature of government and individual rights and posits that any form of taxation is inherently coercive and violates the individual rights. However, his theory is flawed in many ways, but I'll name just 3. Well, how about this? I'm going to start with your argument is flawed, because that's not the argument that Frank Choderov makes at all. Now, that is the argument that I will make, and that I make personally, and that many others before me, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Murray Rothbard, even Mises, Ludwig von Mises has extolled about this kind of stuff before. And there's plenty of others that have talked about it. But that is not what Frank Choderov in this particular book, and this is the only thing I've ever read of Choderov, so I'm not familiar with anything else by him. This is the only thing I've ever read by him, by Choderov, and it's a fantastic, easy read that you can get through in an evening, if you're even for the slowest readers like myself. It's only like 70 pages long. So, anyways. Frank Chodorov's argument is, and I'll let him tell you. So he says, for the opposition, and this is this is right after the foreword. This is in his own words that he wrote in 1954, I think it was. Yep, February of 1954. He said. This is the crux of his argument. For the opposition to the trend takes the shape of reform, while nothing will turn it but revolution, and by revolution I mean the return to the people of that sovereignty which our tradition assumes them to have. I mean the return to them of the power which government confiscated by way of the 16th Amendment. Choderov, he argues that we need to get rid of the 16th Amendment, which I have argued many times, and I have actually argued before I even read Choderov. It was during an argument many years ago about the 16th Amendment that somebody said, "Hey, you sound like Choderov." I was like, "Oh, well, I'll have to go read him." That's how I come across it. And I was like, well, no, actually, he sounds way better than I do, because he's way smarter than I am and way more articulate than I am. I am not very articulate. So Choderov comes across with this. He is not against all taxation, as far as I know. I mean, he could very well be, but this specific, he's talking about the income tax in the 16th Amendment and why it needs to be repealed. So your argument right out of the gate, friend, is flawed, because that's not the argument that he is making. That is the argument I make. Don't get me wrong, but that's not the argument I was making well, it kind of was the argument that I was making, but oh, shoot. Because I think once you take this to the arguments that Choderov lays out in his pamphlet, when you take them to their most logical extent, they are actually arguments against all forms of taxation. But so my friend argues that there's these three things to it. So there's taxation is good because it's established and regulated by law, and then from a pragmatic standpoint, because some people could hurt or lose essential services provided by the federal government. And then finally, there's voluntary compliance. Because some people would pay taxes, that means that taxation is legitimate. On all 3 points, that's totally wrong on each one. So I'm going to start with the last one. Just because somebody will volunteer themselves or they approve of something does not negate or make it right if somebody else does not consent to it. All right, and that's just, you learn that in kindergarten. You don't need anything more than common sense to realize that just because you agree to play soccer ball or kickball, and I want to go play, baseball, your agreeability to play kickball does not obligate me to come play kickball if I want to go play baseball. That's kindergarten stuff. So, and that applies in the real world and to the adult world. Just because you are obligated to do something does not mean that I'm obligated to do it. Right? That's an obligation on you. Or just because you consent to something, does not mean I consent to it, and therefore it's not applicable to me. That's a terrible argument. Oh, because you agree to something, therefore it must be good for everybody. There's nothing else that you could possibly think of that falls in line that way. That's just irrational at best. That's like saying, because the king says it so, well, then it's the way it is. It doesn't work that way. I mean, we don't have kings here in America. I'm sorry. What can I say? I am my own king. So then, from the pragmatic standpoint, completely eliminating taxes could lead to a collapse of essential services. I'm not going to say that it could lead to it. I am going to say it will lead to it. And I am glad if it does lead to the collapse of education, because education in America sucks really, really bad. Since the establishment of the Department of Education in 1979, didn't exist before then. You can basically chart the decline of the American education system by every single metric that somebody could conceivably look and measure whether it is working well or bad. It fails miserably on all accounts since 1979. Now, you could say that it was probably charting a decade before that, and maybe a little bit longer than that. But it accelerated, starting with the Department of Education, because, well, it's top-down command and control on education. And education, like it or not, is actually a highly individualized thing, and it's education is specific to each individual and to a particular person. So saying that it has to be done or something has to be taught at an upper level for 300 and 400 million people at this same exact way or dictate by fiat from it's stupid. It's bad enough that education is centralized at the state level as well. It should be, at a minimum, at the county level, is where all those decisions should be made. After all, that's really how education in America is paid for, is at the county level with county taxes, property taxes. And I know that for a fact because I've looked at the CAFR for Talbot County. I can tell you from our CAFR that of the $74 million that we spend on education that is raised from our property taxes, only about I think it works out to be like the $13,000 per student that attends school, of which about $2,000 of that comes from other sources. Everything else comes from right here in the county, and nowhere else. So, yeah, if education collapses, that actually be a net positive, a benefit to society, not a detriment to society, because the way that we do education now totally sucks. But all these other essential services that would collapse and should collapse are because government is providing things, the federal government in particular is providing things that they should not be providing. That is not things that do not fall in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and the way the federal government is supposed to operate. All right, if it is not spelled out specifically in Article 1, Section 8, then it is reserved for the citizens of the states or the states themselves. So all these other essential services that you might think are essential are not essential. And if it is essential to you, you can pay for them. The individual can pay for them. I promise you that if overnight some goofball service that the government, the federal government pays for exorbitantly, by the way, way more than market rates, and it probably run extremely inefficiently, was to go away, that would present an opportunity for somebody in the market to say, hey, I can do it cheaper and faster and better, and I will take on that service. There's no question about it. So this pragmatic standpoint still fails, because it fails miserably just on the way the government is supposed to be set up here in the federal in the United States of America under our Constitution. All these things that you would consider essential are not essential. What's essential is courts, the post office, and the military. Outside of that, it pretty much doesn't exist. All right? It's not in the purview of the federal government. So if it's not a court, if it's not the military, and it's not the post office, it's not an essential service. And if it is an essential service, then it's something that the states need to be providing, not the federal government. So that's that. Then finally, the very first argument is from a legal standpoint. Just because something is legal does not make it moral or ethical. Do we need to go there? Do you really need me to say the word? Slavery. Now I'm going to say it. Slavery. Slavery was legal. Slavery was the norm. Slavery built society for, ever since man started writing down history. But slavery is wrong, because you cannot compel somebody against their will to do something that is morally wrong. It is ethically wrong. Legalities be damned. Jim Crow was wrong. So this argument that because something is legal, or that there is a system set up in place for to do it, doesn't matter. It can still be wrong, and taxation is one of those things that is extremely wrong, because taxation, just like theft, does not have consent, and you have to have consent in order for something to be legal or to be ethical or moral. Right? If you don't consent to it, it's not. The difference between sex and rape: sex is consensual, rape is not. Okay? The difference between theft and taxation: there is none. Theft is non-consensual? Taxation is non-consensual. Okay? Difference between murder and execution? Nothing. They're both non-consensual. All right? Consent is required, and that's a beautiful word that you used in that argument. So you have to, if you're going to use the word consent in your argument, you realize it's going to eat your argument completely, because with regards to or with respect to taxation, because taxation is non-consensual, and if you consent to it, it's not taxation. It's you purchasing something. It's an agreement to do something for goods or services, whether the government provides it or not. If you agree to it, then it's consensual. But if you don't agree to it, it's non-consensual. Therefore, if it's compelled or coerced out of you, it is theft. No other way to look at it. All right, enough of that. So then we get down here, and this is my friend asked some really great questions. Again, don't take it the wrong way. If my friend is listening to this, who is probably tuned out by now, but my friend is a wonderful person who thinks differently than an American does, because they are not originally from America. And so they have this wonderful worldview that is not American, and that's probably what I appreciate the most, more than anything else, is this view from where they are from versus the view from where I am from, which is vastly different. And so I like that. I like that a lot. And I also like the fact that this person is very, very well educated. And because of that, they tend to think a little bit differently, and gives pushback and raises great points. So, so here we are, the next paragraph. Choderov tries to address the funding of essential services and infrastructure without taxes by suggesting they should be covered voluntarily through private enterprise and voluntary contributions, and that should be enough. Yes, that's part of it. I'll say that there is some suggestion to that, but it is mostly what I just went through the diatribe about it being a state's issue. So the states need to provide it. So the people of each individual state should be the ones that say yay or nay on that. It's not a federal issue. So yes, I think a lot of the stuff can be solved in the marketplace, and Choderov suggests that as well. But largely his argument is not that. It is that these essential services, such as education or electricity, atomic energy commission or something like that, well, all that should be handled at the state level, rather than at the federal level, or completely eliminated, because it has no need for it. So he reckons that people would be more motivated to support services they directly value and use. Well, yes, that's not a reckoning. That's actually a fact. I mean, if that's just the fact of life. I mean, if you pay for something, if you pay for a car versus having a car given to you, you tend to treat it better. But likewise, if you own a home versus renting a home, you tend to treat it differently than what you rented it. Than a rental property or a rental car. It's it's the rental company's car. It's not my car. I don't care. So that's just a fact of life. But how do you ensure that those market mechanisms would ensure equitable access or adequate funding for all essential services? This is the European part of my friend that's coming through. Right? There's no such thing as in the market as equitable, other than what somebody desires and what they're willing to do to get it. So you save, and you eventually go out and you buy what you want to buy. That is how equitable the market is. And you're not forced to buy those things that you do not have a value for. That's like the ACA, the Obamacare. If you're 20 years old and in great health, you don't value a health insurance policy the same way that somebody who's 60 years old and is in bad health. You see them completely differently. So likewise, it's the same thing in the market. I mean, it's up to the individual as to what they value most. In economics, there's a whole field of study of that called praxeology. So in praxeology, everything in life that an individual wants is ordered based on what their preference is. So I like Tom Woods when he kind of explains this. He's like, I've got an hour to myself. I can sit down and make a ham sandwich, or I can watch the baseball game. It's an order of preference thing, and there's no right or wrong answer other than what your preference is for the moment, and that could change at any given moment. So this equitable access and adequate funding for all essential services, particularly those that benefit the broader community. So Ayn Rand talks about this, the virtue of selfishness, right? So when me serving my individual needs will eventually will also serve your needs as well. So me deciding that, so for instance, what I do, one of the things I do for a living is I repair computers and tablets. I do that because I'm good at it. I do that also because I can make a lot more money than, say, stacking pallets, right? But I do that ultimately so that I can get money. Right? So that then I can turn around and buy other things, pay my mortgage, or buy a car, or add an addition onto the house, or whatever. All those things I do for selfish reasons. But while I'm doing those for selfish reasons, they actually stimulate the economy, and they stimulate growth in the economy, and so other people benefit from those. Other people get jobs from those. And so Lawrence Lessig wrote, I think it was iPencil. In his iPencil essay is just one of the most articulate, well thought out ways of explaining that nobody could actually produce a pencil on their own, and it takes all these other people to do it. To put in, it takes their labor from the rubber manufacturers and the miners of carbon, and the lumberjacks out there producing wood. And then there's the tires for the vehicles for the earth movers, and there's all the parts that go into making up a Husqvarna chainsaw. Well, all of those things make up what makes a pencil. So there's no such thing as some guy standing at the top shouting down to the rest of us with a clipboard and a pencil saying, hey, this is what you need to make. No, it's all of us making individual decisions based on what our needs are that actually produce this chaotic, beautiful order in the market. And so you're demanding that, how do you order? How do you get equity, and how do you get something for the community? I just do. I go to work every day, and I produce, and I buy, and I drink beer, and I go to the grocery store, and I put gas in my car, and I fix a computer, and I fix a tablet, and I order parts, and all of those things that I do stimulate the economy, and those things, that's what produces essential services that are adequate funding and equitable access. all those moves that I do, and you do, and your neighbor does, and the person who works in the cubicle next to you, and the person you're talking to on the phone when you call up to order a pizza or to do customer service with a guy in Pakistan, right? Not just here in America, but there's tech support people that you call in Pakistan. They're making money providing you tech support, right? They don't know you. It's a beautiful thing. So you're asking for answers that nobody, not a single person in this world knows how to do, and you're asking for central control to do something like that. That doesn't exist. What does exist is what my needs are presently in the moment. And me, with how much money I can, with my dollars, I'm going to go out and purchase it. And that is what determines everything. Nothing else. It's not the president. It's not who we elect next. It's not our congressmen, and it's not our senators, and it's not even my mayor or my town council or my county council or the bureaucrat that sits down on the code enforcement and zoning committee or the election board. None of those people have that power. That power of the green in your hand. That green is what makes you, and your ability to earn that green, that's really what drives everything. So this idea that I need to have that answer, or that anybody else needs to have that answer, well, that's just more than any single person or any group of people could ever sit down and flesh out. It's not a task that they can do. Even with quantum computing, you could not visualize the enormity of all the variables that you're trying to put into that sentence and what it would require to know. It would be easier to predict the weather on an island in the Indian Ocean 30 days from now based on the flapping of a bird's wings in my front yard with a quantum computer than it would be to do what you're asking to do. It just doesn't exist. And there's no way that you could do it. Because the human body, the human person, has infinite wants and infinite desires. But it only has a small amount of needs. Right? Clothing, heating, air conditioning isn't even a requirement, just clothing and heating and food and water. Those are your basic needs for life. Everything else is a want and a desire. And the way you fulfill a want and a desire is by going out and making more money. That's really it. And the way you make more money is by making yourself more valuable. All right. So then we get into this. It is amazing to me that this was said on Monday, or that this was written on Monday, because then you get dropped with equal access and opportunity. Do you think they'll be out there providing funding to recover from Helene over multiple states? Well, let me just say this much. Elon Musk did more on Tuesday by pushing an update to Starlink satellites and making satellite internet access for everybody who lives in Tennessee and all the affected areas totally free, regardless of the ability to pay, than Kamala Harris did with FEMA coming out and saying, well, we're going to pay everybody $750. Are you kidding me? They can't. There are people out there that literally are picking up bodies left and right. And there are people 40, 50 miles in the woods that are stranded right now and can't get out. And the federal government is doing nothing. And the federal government has, you know what they did? They sent the National Guard, then deployed them overseas the day before Helene hit. They didn't even stop it. So, and I think they sent 2 helicopters. 2 helicopters. Wow. You're kidding me. 2 helicopters to cover that entire region. Folks, they need to be sending every helicopter that you can. And then they told everybody that, on Twitter and through the news media, don't donate money. Don't come and help out. We've got this. It's us. The federal government's going to handle it. FEMA and TEMA are going to handle this. Don't send any money other than if you're going to send money, send it to us. Don't send it to local charities. Don't send it to churches. Don't send it directly to people on the ground. And definitely don't come down to us and volunteer. We are going to organize this. 5 days later, they've done Shinola. They've said, we're going to send everybody $750 in that affected area, which is exactly the amount of money that they sent to Maui. That's amazing. Yeah. Nobody, if after this, anybody that comes and stumbles across this that is, 6 months, a year from now, and you're living in Tennessee, and you're back up and running, and you're just starting to get your life back together, or you're in North Carolina, and you're just starting to rebuild, and you've lost people, and you've lost your property, and the people that are there, they're your neighbors and your churches and your local businesses. Those are the ones that are going to be there for you, that are going to help you out. I want you to sit down and think about it on April 15th. Yep. Think about taxation. Think about the theft that you've been taken advantage of for all these years. And what did they do? They said, we're going to send you $750. Oh, and we're going to set up some tents and some parking lots in the non-affected areas, and maybe if you live 30 or 40 miles up in the mountains deep inside the woods where nobody can get to, if you can get to us, if you survive, we have water and food for you, and some clothing. Yeah. Sorry. There ain't a thing that anybody can say to me right now that makes any lick of sense for this right here. Yeah, Elon Musk, hero. Elon Musk did something immediately, and he didn't ask for permission. He just said, hey, this is the right thing to do, and that's what he did. So yeah, Elon Musk could wipe out poverty, but so could the U.S. federal government. They could wipe it out. But what do? They create poverty, and they create situations, here and abroad. It's amazing. It's amazing that anybody can make this particular argument. And especially, 4 days later, I hope, I can only hope that if you thought this on Monday and you're looking at the headlines and all the stuff that's going on in North Carolina and Tennessee, and Georgia and Florida right now, I can only hope that one would change their mind and go, yeah, I hate government just as much as Norm does. Which raises the case of ethics and morality. How do you... I've already delved into this. I'm not going to address this because it is not ethical and it is not moral for me to go to sleep at night going, oh, I pay taxes. Somebody else can deal with it. That's not ethical. That's not moral. All right? That's shit. That's what that is. That's asshole behavior. And if you think that because you pay taxes and that absolves you from some responsibility, well, then that's an asshole way to think, and you need to stop it. All right? And there's no other way to say it. So it's people getting up and going down and helping their neighbor that is ethical and moral, and they don't need the permission of the government, and they don't need taxes to do that. taxes hinder their ability to do that. If you take 27% of somebody's annual income, it's 27, think about it, that's 27% of the time that you spend that you can't get back at work, right? Because time is the most precious resource that we have. Time is the one thing you can't get back. I can get money back. I can rebuild a house, and I can buy a new car, and you know, but I cannot turn back the hands of time. And so you're telling me somehow it's ethical to steal 27% of my time at work and get nothing to show in return from it. And then if I live in a disaster area, to somehow go, oh, well, we'll give you $750. Yeah. Sorry. Ain't buying it. Not for a moment. Yeah. And anybody who thinks like that, you can go screw yourself. Yep. Yeah. Don't waste time. And that's what you're doing, is you're taking 27% of somebody's annual time and giving it away to Israel or the Ukraine so that they can bomb the hell out of each other and kill people, and then send $750 to your fellow Americans who desperately need resources, not a $750 check. They desperately need resources. They need medical supplies. They need evacuations. They need food and water. And you're going to say, oh, I'm going to send you $750. Screw you. That's what I got to say to that. Yeah. But good discussion, though. Definitely a good discussion. All right. So that is my reply. And I'm sorry, the more I get to thinking about what's going on in the aftermath of Helene, and the more it makes me angry. It makes me downright. I just want to see the utter decimation and destruction of the federal government once and for all. And I pray that when it happens, that the good people of the states will pick up and not replace it with anything and just be themselves. Marylanders don't need the federal government. Delawareans don't need the federal government. Virginians don't need the federal government. Texans sure as hell don't need the federal government. Californians, well, they're different. They might need the federal government. And there was a time when Massachusetts didn't either. But it's, folks, if you're still listening, please realize that taxation is theft, that the government is screwing you and screwing your fellow Americans, and it's about time that you wake up to that fact. God bless the USA.